is the order that is followed for that sin if the person was convicted of it. And you see here that when the person, let's say if there was someone that was convicted of this theft Islamically, and then he suffered the consequence, let's say his right hand was amputated. So for him, let's say him in the criminal mind, for most criminals, that would reform them. Why? Because now, like, they can't go get around reality. They can't try and convince themselves it's somebody else's fault or somebody else did it or somebody else, you know, somebody else is the reason for them not to have a hand right now. Is they don't have a hand right now because they stole. So that reality they always have to face it. So that helps for them to have the realization that they need to change, etc. Uh Also, even if let's say their mentality isn't reformed now, but still without a hand, without a right hand, is gonna make it really difficult to steal. Especially like if the person they, had some sort of mastery and expertise with that hand to facilitate for them to steal. Now, if they're going to continue stealing, they'd have to relearn all of that with their other hand. That's what would make it more difficult for them to steal. And even if, like, let's say he steals again, then there's the other process where then he gets convicted and he would have his left foot amputated. But still, also another benefit of it is the people, right? The people that they see this person now with an amputated hand. So there would be like an example for them. Do you want to be the one with an amputated hand? Do you want to be the one that doesn't have both hands? No? Okay, then don't steal. And so no people 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 would people that would have been, let's say, inclined to steal, people that would have been inclined to steal would not do it because they would see that it is not worth it because they don't want to lose a hand. So we said, um, if the person steals and they get caught, they get convicted the first time, they get their right hand cut off, and if they steal again, then the left foot is amputated, and then the left hand, and then the right foot. So to go a little bit more detail, stealing is among the enormous sins that they are by consensus. It is forbidden and it's known in the religion by necessity, meaning that the young and the old, the ignorant and the knowledgeable, they all know the judgment. If you ask them, what's the judgment of stealing? They say haram. And originally, it means to take money, the money of others, stealthily and in a concealed way, not relying upon strength, not relying upon running away. Because if you take somebody's money relying on strength, that's called robbery. And the second one is called in Arabic ikhtilas, which is a certain type of robbery. Because if you let's say if someone is walking down the street and then they're holding a cell phone, and then for example another person is walking down the street, a thief, and he for example snatches the cell phone out of the person's hands and runs, that person can't catch them because the other person's too fast. So that's not technically called in Arabic sariqa. It's not the sariqa that we're talking about. So that's called the ikhtilas. But so then the author said, even if the thief steals an egg, he is damned. Because of the hadith, لعن الله السارق يسرق البيضة, narrated by Bukhari and Muslim, which means Allah damn the thief that steals an egg. and the one who consumes the item that was left for him for safekeeping without the consent of the owner is not included in the judgment of stealing that we're talking about here. The one that we're talking about here is the one that is comes together with the religious penalty. And those three that we mentioned, robbery and ikhtilas and eating from the safekeeping without the consent of the owner is not considered sadiqah. And so, for example, someone's hand would not get cut off for that. So let's go into detail about the religious penalty. If the thief, he steals what is equivalent to 1/4 of a dinar, and a one with the amount, for example, the grammage of 1/4 of a dinar in pure gold, if they steal the equivalent of that amount. I don't currently have, let's say, a dollar amount, but it is a small amount. It's not like a huge, huge amount. Um, so if the person steals that amount, the amount that's equivalent to 1/4 of a dinar, um, from its place that it's kept secure. So let's say this person stole diamonds, right? He stole some diamonds. Where were the diamonds being kept? In the safe. So the person went into the safe, cracked the code, took the diamonds, closed the safe, and left without anyone detecting them. This is the type of stealing that we're talking about because the diamonds were stolen from the safe. And the safe is the place where normally diamonds are kept safe. So when we're looking at the item that's being stolen, we have to take into account, it was that item being kept in the place that it's normally kept safe, or were the diamonds left on the kitchen table, let's say, and they were stolen? Were the diamonds left like on the windowsill and they were stolen? Do you usually keep a bag of diamonds safe on the kitchen table? You throw the bag of diamonds right next to the mail that you got on the kitchen table? No. You take the diamonds and seal them up in an envelope or in a little bag, and then you put them in a safe and you close the safe and you lock it because you don't want anybody to steal your diamonds. So the second condition in order for the person to get the religious penalty is that they steal the thing from the place that is kept secure. And that differs based on the thing that's being kept safe and the circumstances and the times. As for what was taken unjustly from other than his place of self-keeping, then the hand of the thief would not be cut off for that. The place for safekeeping of gold and silver coins is different than the place that you would keep safe, let's say, furniture. And the place that you keep safe, let's say, livestock, is different than the place that you would keep safe, let's say, fruits. Any of the fruits of your trees or your plants or whatever. So those things are taken into consideration in order to um, judge or in order to confirm whether or not the person is going to get their hand cut off. If they stole the equivalent of a 1/4 of a dinar and they took it from the place that's normally kept safe, then this is the one who gets their hand cut off. And for that reason, they get their hand cut off. As for if the person, let's say, he left the diamonds like sitting on the windowsill, and then somebody came by and snatched it and ran away with it, or grabbed it and then walked away with it, that person would not get their right hand cut off. It's haram, of course. He took the money unjustly, he's not allowed, but he wouldn't get his hand cut off. If he was caught, he would not get his hand cut off for that. So if that is confirmed, and if that money, let's say, was taken from its place of safekeeping, So after that, what happens to the person if he gets caught? He would be, he would have his right hand cut off. And then, so what is the process? How is it that that is done? For example, the person's hand would be taken, his wrist would be dislocated from his forearm, and then his hand would be cut at the wrist. That is, so it wouldn't be cut through the bone. It would be cut at the wrist with something very sharp, and then the wound will be cauterized so that he doesn't bleed out, and that's it. And if he steals again, then he would get his left foot cut off from the ankle. Same process. And then if he does it a third time, then his right hand will be cut off, and he does it a fourth time, then his right foot will be cut off. If he does it a fifth time, then he is punished a certain punishment. Uh, but he would not be killed. So he's got his feet cut off, and he still steals. This person, he would he would get a specific punishment that is designated by the Muslim ruler, but he would not get killed. He would not get executed. And whatever is narrated about that, um, referring to execution, this has been abrogated, or it is interpreted as that he would be executed if he had deemed it halal. So here's a benefit that should be mentioned, and this is something that many people are unaware of, so it's important to mention it. Among the cases that the people are unaware of is that if the thief enters the Muslim thief, make sure you understand it's the Muslim thief. If the Muslim thief enters to steal and the owner of the house notices, and then the Muslim thief wanted to run away and he did not have a weapon, and the owner of the house hits him, he is not allowed to hit him or kill him while the Muslim thief is running away. As for if the Muslim thief had a weapon and the owner of the house feared that the Muslim thief would kill him with it, then he's allowed to hit him. And if he took the money, well, so okay, so obviously that money, if he takes the money, he is not allowed to have it. That thief is not allowed to take it. But the owner, he can just be like, if he doesn't want a confrontation, if he wants to just um be done with the situation, he can tell the thief, like, that he just tells the thief, like, just don't kill me or something like that. He doesn't have to fight him over the money. That's what I'm saying. He doesn't have to fight him over the money. But if the thief is taking the money, he can do something to make him leave out taking the money. So here we have different scenarios. The Muslim thief, the one scenario, the Muslim thief is unarmed. When he notices the owner of the house is there, he turns to run away. In this case, the owner is not allowed to hit him or kill him. If the Muslim thief, he has a weapon, and the owner of the house fears that the thief would use that weapon against him to hurt him or kill him, then the owner of the house is allowed to hit him or kill the thief. And if the thief takes the money and leaves, the owner is allowed to do something to force the thief to give him the money back. Like let's say in the case that he knew who he was. And if the thief would be deterred by, let's say, yelling and screaming, then it's not permissible to hit him. As for if the owner of the house initially tried to kill the thief without a religious reason, so then his sin is the sin of killing a Muslim unjustly. And his torture would be similar to that torture. Um, so if the Muslim thief he was surprised while he was inside of the house, and he fears that this thief would initiate the fighting, then the owner of the house is allowed to hit him. However, if he finds the thief and he doesn't have any weapons, and he does not fear that he's going to attack him, then it's not permissible to initiate the attack. So this is a very important case. And sometimes you find a thief and they just, let's say, they didn't know that you're gonna be there. They were trying to, that's what I'm saying. It's why it's they get their hand cut off because they do it like in a sneaky way. So but let's say that thief, he wasn't expecting you to be home and he was just gonna go in and crack your safe and take your stuff. But then as he was doing that, then for example, you came home. So now the thief, he wants to leave because you're there now. So he's not going to do anything while you're there. So as he's trying to leave, let's say you see him, you catch him, and he doesn't have a weapon, and he doesn't. Then the thief is not like trying to attack you. In this case, you cannot hit him, you cannot kill him. And if you did hit him or kill him, the Muslim thief, if you did hit him or kill him, then you would have the sin that applies to that. He would, if he kills him, then he kills a Muslim unjustly. It's as if he killed a Muslim unjustly, uh, and he would get that penalty. Then the author said, to loot, which is stealing in public. So basically, like what people do, um, when they start a riot, they break down the stores, they break the windows, they go in, they take all the stuff. This is haram. It's not permissible to do that. And this is an enormous sin. Next one is forcible seizures. Sin among the sins in the hand is forcible seizure. Forcible seizure basically means taking somebody's money or right, relying on power or strength in the open. Um, and basically, let's say a person has influence or a person has, let's say, courts or lawyers or whatever, and they, take away your property or they take away like some sort of asset that you have through the courts. This is forcible seizure. And of course, unjustly. I'm talking about unjustly. If they do that to you unjustly. Not if it's done to you, let's say, justly. If it's unjust, then it's a sin. If it's just, then it's not a sin. And the next one is levying a tax. Levying a tax. And the taxes is what is taken from businesses, like a certain percentage, and it is among the enormous sins, and we talk in detail. And there's no justification for tax. So basically, the responsibility of the Muslim government, right? The responsibility of the Muslim government. We're talking about the Muslim government. Even in the secular systems, yani we all know that in the secular systems, uh, their supposed taxes, supposedly they're supposedly going to use it to pay for the roads and to fix the infrastructure and to supposedly fix the country and blah blah blah. But in reality, we all know that the politicians, they don't use our taxes for the benefit, for our benefit. It's just they use it for to fan their pockets. They use it for paying or giving money to the Zionists. They use it for um starting wars, or they use it for any things that has nothing to do with the citizens of this country or any other country. Um, so we know that it's just a scheme of the secular governments just to take our money. And for sure, inside the Muslim system, the Muslim government infrastructure, there's no justification for taking taxes because the Muslim government, they have revenue streams that are allocated to them by the religion. For example, well, not for them uh, per se, but there are revenue streams within Islam that they solve the issues. Let's say that someone would supposedly try to say that they need to take taxes for. So, for example, if they say, "Oh, we need to take taxes because we need to make sure that nobody's homeless, or we need to make sure that nobody's poor," we say, "Okay, the zakat system is in place." So there's always going to be people that make money, and those people, they have to give only a little tiny piece of what they make, so that, to those eight categories of Muslims that are mentioned in the Quran, and among them is the poor and the impoverished, the miskeen and the faqir. So that is one. Another one is there's certain types of assets that get placed into the Muslim treasury, and those assets can only be spent on the welfare of the nation. So if someone is a Muslim ruler, that doesn't mean that they get to live uh, a life of luxury off of the Muslim treasury. No, they have to be very careful with that because that's the money, it belongs to the Muslims, meaning it's the money that is supposed to be used for the benefit of the Muslim nation, not so that they can live in worldly luxury. This is why some of the pious rulers, which they were few and far in between, for example, they didn't even use the money of the Muslims like for their own personal needs. They would only use it for the welfare of the Muslim nation. But it's hard to find nowadays, let's say, someone like a ruler that would have that level of integrity. But we have that in Islam. So basically, there's no justification for taxes. There's no justification. So if the government needs money, then the government can find ways to make that money other than saying, hey, all of you need to give me a part of your money. Not only that, they do it in an unjust way. But think about the way that taxes works here in this country, for example. When you buy something at the store, right? They call it a sales tax, right? So let's say that dollar that you got, first of all, how did you get it? So let's say you got it through your job. So if you got it through your job, then they taxed you already for that money. Then when you go and buy something, you get charged tax again. And that is the way that these non-Muslims, this is the way of their unjust system. But they're basically saying because one person bought something from another person, you have to pay the government a certain amount. And that is unjust because basically it's like they're getting a little part of that sale. But not only that, so basically, who's the one that's supposed to pay the government the tax is the seller because it's a sales tax. So, but what does the seller do? They add the tax into the price. So basically, the buyer pays for it. It's not. something not good. Then he said, taking from the spoils of war before the religious division. This is called the al-ghulul, which is taking the money of the spoils before it has been divided religiously. So there's a certain division, there's a certain way that the Muslim ruler divides those spoils amongst the army and amongst the Muslim nation. And so before that process takes place, if someone takes from the spoils, then they have committed an enormous sin. It's a sin of the hand. The next is homicide. Among the sins of the hand is homicide, for which expiation is in any case due. The expiation is to free a non-defective Muslim slave. If unable, then one must fast 2 consecutive months. Murder subjects the murderer to being killed unless the inheritors of the deceased forgive the murderer for compensation or without cost. In the case of killing someone by mistake or semi-mistake, payment of blood money, diya, is mandatory, which is 100 camels for a female Muslim and half of that for a free female Muslim. The elements of the diya vary according to the homicide. So we're going to call it homicide. Homicide is the deliberate killing and the intentional killing of a Muslim. Um, and also there's an expiation due whenever the killing happens, but even if it was not intentional. The expiation is what is to free a non-defective Muslim slave. If unable, then one must fast 2 consecutive months. So the first type of killing we're gonna call it the intentional killing. This is when a Muslim kills another Muslim or a dhimmi that is ma'soom on purpose, then this is called the intentional killing. And the me is the non-Muslim who has a treaty, not a treaty, an agreement with the Muslim government. As long as he is in good standing or in compliance with that agreement, it's forbidden to kill him. And it is counted among the enormous sins. And killing a Muslim unjustly is the biggest enormous sin after blasphemy. And similar to the dhimmi is the non-Muslim who has made a treaty, or the non-Muslim who has been granted safety. So for the treaty, you need the Muslim ruler. So none of those exist right now. For the Muslim that's been granted safety, like if for the non-Muslim that's been granted safety, for example, if there's a non-Muslim that is for example, let's say with me, and then I say, okay, you're in my safekeeping or you're in my safety, then it would not be permissible for another Muslim to kill him while he's in my safety because he has been granted that. But for the treaty, it's only done with the caliph. As for that treaty, it cannot be longer than 10 years, and only the caliph does it. And the keeping safe, it'll be 4 months or less, and that can be done by the caliph and other than him. So among the judgments of killing that are applied to the dunya is that there's an expiation when the person kills on purpose or other than that, which is to free a Muslim slave that is free from defects that prevent them from working uh, like the one who has a limp, let's say, and meaning that that type of defect, like having a limp, uh, if a slave, if a Muslim slave has that defect, then he would not be eligible to be paid as an expiation. Now, if the person doesn't have a Muslim slave, nor does he have the amount of money to buy a Muslim slave, uh, then he has to fast 2 consecutive lunar months. Now, if the person kills another Muslim unjustly, and what it means, and he intentionally, deliberately, meaning he targeted that Muslim, and he targeted him with something that usually kills, uh, like a sword or a dagger or a boulder, then the judgment of that is an eye for an eye. If the one who was killed was, if his the one who was killed, his blood was valuable, or his blood had value, or they basically, that the spilling of his blood has a consequence, or the spilling of his blood is and he's something that is considered a huge waste of something that was precious. And so excluded from that is the enemy combatant non-Muslim. So who is the enemy combatant non-Muslim? It is the Muslim. I mean, it is the non-Muslim who is not a dhimmi, and who doesn't have a treaty with the caliph, who is basically an enemy combatant, meaning someone that they're accountable, and they're non-Muslim, and they are an enemy combatant. It's called a harbi. And the one who did the killing is uh someone that they agree to the judgments related to killing, like the Muslim, for example, and the dhimmi. The dhimmi, because since he made the contract with the Muslim ruler, so part of that contract is that if he kills a Muslim unjustly, then the judgments of killing would be applied to him. And so there would be no eye for an eye if a young, like if a child or someone who was insane, um, if they killed someone, if a child or someone who was insane killed someone, uh, they would not be executed.
Dada, this is for you.
Also, if a Muslim kills a dhimmi unjustly, he would not be executed for that. The Muslim would not be executed for that.
I can watch your iPad.
And also, if let's say a parent killed their child, they will not get executed for that. And of course, it would be a sin. And of course, they have to do the expiation. Of course, it's an enormous sin, but they don't get executed for that. There's many details pertaining to the eye for an eye rule. But so if the killing intentionally, if a Muslim killed another Muslim on purpose and he targeting him with something that usually kills, then that person and he would be executed if the inheritors of the victim, if they decide that. Or they can decide to just take the dia, the blood money, or they could decide to just forgive the killer for nothing. So if that's the case, that's the case with the intentional killing. Now there's a certain case called the semi-intentional or similar to intentional, which is when let's say two people are fighting, but he's not targeting him with something that usually kills. Like let's say they're shouting at each other's faces, and then he pushes him, he shoves him really hard, and then he let's say falls back and he trips, and uh he smashes his skull and he dies. So in this case, he wasn't trying to kill him. He was just like arguing with him. He pushed him and he fell over and he broke his head, and now he's dead. So this is a semi-intentional killing. There's no execution for this. There is the expiation and there is the blood money. And then there is the unintentional killing, which is completely accidental. Which is, let's say, you're hunting in the forest or whatever, and you're shooting your bow and arrow at a deer, and then after you shot your bow and arrow, yeah, and you headed towards the deer, a Muslim jumps in front of the arrow, and he gets killed. So that was completely unintentional, completely accidental. In that case, there's no sin on the person, but he still has to pay the expiation, and he still has to pay the blood money. So that's it, basically. Those are the basic judgments related to that killing. Just for the amount of the blood money, I'll tell you the exact amount. So it is 100 camels if the deceased was a free Muslim Masoom male, and half of it for the free Muslim that was Masooma. So 100 camels. Let's say that the average price of a camel was 5,000, just to make the math easy. So 5,000 times 100 is how much? 500,000. So that would be around the equivalent amount, and just ballpark something like that. Uh, that would be paid for killing a Muslim, and even if it wasn't on purpose, because remember we said that the kafara is paid in all cases. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. As for the kafir, yani the dhimmi, if he was Masoom, if his blood was Masoom, it would be a third of that of the Muslim. if he was a Christian or a Jew, and if he was uh like a Majusi or other than that, or an idol worshiper, it would be a third of the fifth of the expiation for the Muslim. And in those cases where, let's say, they had a treaty or they were kept like under safekeeping, there's more details about the eye for an eye. Like, let's say if you break someone's hand, or if you make someone go blind, or if you uh cut someone, there's certain there's certain payback that they have to pay. We'll talk about that inshallah next time. There's a lot of details about that. And there's cases where they mention, for example, if um if let's say you give your child to, like, let's say, someone to train him how to swim, to teach him how to swim, and the child drowns, then who pays it? Who pays the expiation? So all those details are mentioned. They mention, for example, if someone put a rock in the road of a Muslim's road, or somebody else's property without their permission, and then somebody came and tripped over it, and died because of it, he's obligated to pay the blood money. And the one who put the rock, the people that would pay the expiation on the blood money on his behalf, if he had killed someone, they have to pay for that. Subhanallah. So important to be careful. So important. May Allah Ta'ala protect us, make us as perfect Muslims, and make our final words La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. If there are no questions, we'll conclude. طيب نهلل لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ربي اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات بارك الله فيكم. Assalamu alaikum. Oh, there's a question here. It says, what is the definition of a ma'soom person? Um, Someone who their blood is not considered worthless Islamically. It's the best definition that I can say in English. But for example, the the enemy combatant, not Muslim, non-Muslim, he's not Masoom. An example of a non-Muslim that would be Masoom is the Dhimmi, for example, would be Masoom. His blood would be Masoom. The Dhimmi is the non-Muslim who has made a contract with the Muslim ruler that he would live under, he would be a subject of the Muslim government, he would live under the rules of Islam. Another question is, the kafara is fulfilled in the case of unjust killing, even though there is no calendar, for example, nowadays? Yes, because it's not related to like the infrastructure. So they free a Muslim slave. If they can't find one, they can't buy one to set one free, then they fast 2 consecutive lunar months. That's for the kafara. For the blood money, also it applies too. You have to pay the blood money to the inheritors. طيب, alhamdulillah. Barakallahu feekum. Inshallah, we'll continue next week. About abrogated, it was talking about that like let's say we had said that if someone steals, let's say 4 times, the first time they get their right hand cut off, second time their left foot, third time their left hand, fourth time their right foot, right? But they steal again. They have no hands and feet, but they stole again. What do? We don't execute them. We don't sentence them to death. The judgment is that they get punished a punishment and that is seen fit by the Muslim ruler. And so then the Sheikh mentioned that if you come across, let's say, some supposed hadith or narration where it talks about that, it talks about killing the thief who stole a fifth time, the Sheikh is saying that's abrogated, meaning that that judgment was, if you want to say, replaced by another judgment, by a second judgment that came after it. So let's say that was applied for some time, and then a new judgment was revealed that now that new judgment is applied and the old one is no longer applied. That's an abrogation. It's called the an-nasakh in Arabic. And then the Sheikh was saying it could be abrogated or it could be that you make that wheel to it. You give it a valid interpretation other than the literal, which is that uh that person who stole he would be and he would not be, let's say, executed or killed unless he thought that what he was doing was halal. That he would be killed for contradicting the religion. Barakallahu feekum. Inshallah, we will continue next week. Assalamu alaikum.